Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Next Chapter with Tiffany. I am so thrilled that you've chosen to give us your time and listen to this amazing conversation with my good friend, Dr. Becky Wolery. Today's episode is all about shame. What is shame? And the difference between shame and guilt, and what tools that we can actually utilize to help us work through bringing that shame up and getting to where that doesn't drive us or allow us to fear that anymore. So thank you so much. Be sure that you find Dr. Becky on her YouTube channel. It's Dear Dr. Becky. Make sure that you subscribe to her YouTube channel and The Next Chapter with Tiffany as well, because we want to grow. We want to continue to develop content, and we have a lot of great things in the works to be able to bring more content to you guys. That is really, really good stuff. So thank you once again, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, Miss Becky.
Hey,
How
Miss
are you
Tiffany.
today?
I am just amazing. Great to
I'm
be here.
so
Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here again. I cannot thank you enough. And um this stuff that we're doing, I've gotten
Mhm.
such good feedback from it.
Nice.
Lots of people reaching out and saying, "Oh my gosh, I never thought about this and what Dr. Becky
Mhm.
said here and this the content, the subject matter, the
Mhm.
lessons, the little nuggets in there." I've just gotten such great feedback. So I appreciate the fact that you're so willing to keep coming back on here with me and filtering through some amazing conversation. And it just means a lot. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany. It's been amazing. And frankly, I just love your transparency. I really think
Thank
it's
you.
so powerful. And the story that you share and are willing to tell, it's just something that really reaches, I think, so many people. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Gosh, that means a lot. And once again, you give a safe space and a safe platform for that transparency, especially what we talked about the last time. And it just meant a lot to me. So I just
Mhm.
thank you again for that. It's safety is key when it comes to being able to be honest and transparent and air some things that may not be, real comfortable to talk about,
Oh, for
some
sure.
things, and I know that's what you do for a living,
It's true.
but you do it really well. So,
Thank you. I
so,
try. I
and
try.
well, it's effortless. So try, I think is overstating that. I think it's an
Uh,
effortless thing. It's in you. It's an energy that you have. It's that innate capacity for, sincere. I just want to help people, and I want to be an advocate, and I want to do what you can, to do what's needed to help people feel like I can heal, I can work through this. You give tools for that, and it's just you. I'm just gonna say it. So
that is important to me. So you nailed it. I do
yes,
love to help people.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And I think especially, when we experience difficulties in our own life, right? It's wonderful when we can get to a point where like, gosh, I'm good. I'm doing well. I feel good. And I've made so much progress and I understand so much more. And then we just want to share that with everybody, right? We get all
right,
excited because I've done this amazing progress and work in my own life. And then I just want to share it with other people. And that's kind of why I got interested in counseling, for that very reason. So it's
absolutely,
wonderful to be able to have this wider venue, online venue, to be able to help others wherever we can. So, and I say
absolutely,
we because
yeah.
you are
Oh,
like-minded spirit all the way.
absolutely. No, we're definitely aligned in that way, and coming through what, both of us in our own personal lives, and then bringing your passion into that. Of course, I don't have, the background in the education and all that, but the passion and the want to be able to make a difference and help people is the same, So I think that's huge, and I believe it's, again, I'll say it 1,000 times. It's our job when we come through adversity, when we have things that happen and we learn and we have tools and we have the ability to share that with people. It's our job to do that, and I just am passionate about that as well. And so you and I coming together like this is like a win-win on multiple levels. So thank you.
Yeah, and I wish everybody felt it was their job to do that too, right? The world would just
Yeah.
be a better place, but
Oh,
not
definitely.
everybody does. And I also want to say that sometimes I think just because people don't have a formal education, they don't give themselves enough credit because, frankly, the experience that you have is amazing. And also, we take time to learn, right? How much are you educating yourself all the time by reading things
All
online?
the
You
time.
don't have to have a formal experience to be
Yeah.
educated.
Well, I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. I think I could definitely have multiple degrees in the school of hard knocks.
Yeah,
And
right.
that's where I have gotten straight A's across the board, baby. Yeah. Like
You go, girl.
valedictorian and
You get those
salutatorian.
A's. No, don't get those A's.
What what do they call somebody that in college that graduates at the top of their class? Is that summa cum laude or what is that?
Right, summa cum laude.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's me. That's
that's
me.
you.
So it didn't it cost me a lot, but not money. Yeah. There we go.
That's
Yeah.
that's sometimes a degree you don't want to get, but
I
you'll
know.
learn from it,
Yeah.
right?
But
So
I'm like, "Oh, look at this. It's right here. It's not real. It's right there, but it's not, but it is." Yeah. I know.
we need
And
to
all
get
the
you a graduation cap for
I
that.
know. Yep. And then it says what would be School of Hard Knocks. SOHK University, right?
Right.
That's it.
There you go.
I know, I
You
love
got
that.
it.
I got to work on that design now. It's
That's a
on.
good one.
I
Yeah, that's
know. I'm
good.
going to write that down.
I
School
think you
of
should.
Hard Knocks University. Dang. We just came up with something big.
That was super creative.
I
You did
know. I
it.
know. Yeah. Thank you. So, our subject today is something that obviously we both are, we've dealt with our own shame in our lives for whatever reason. Most people have. But we were filtering through some thoughts and some potential topics, but this one just kept resonating in my mind because I have dealt with my own shame regarding things that had happened in my past, which we discussed on our last time we were together. And I wanted to ask you, what is shame and
Mm.
why do we pack so much of it around with
Mm.
us?
Oh my gosh, that's a big, big question. I will say though, isn't it interesting that shame, which I see as one of the most powerful emotions that we have, but yeah, we don't talk about it.
Mhm.
We really don't talk about it. And we all, you mentioned yourself and myself, but frankly, we all experience it to some degree. That's
Yeah,
just a fact.
right.
And if you look at what shame is and we understand it a little bit better, we understand it's actually a social emotion. Have you ever thought of shame as a social emotion?
No, but it makes sense.
It really does because of the way that it's developed, right? So you asked me a very specific question, so I'm going to try to answer you. I want to first say that I want to add something to that because I think it also gets confused sometimes with guilt. And so I think
Mhm.
it's really good to distinguish the difference between like guilt and shame.
Good. Yeah.
So I do want to mention that. So, when we feel guilt, it's typically about like our actions, right? We feel bad about something we did or we didn't do. And then we can oftentimes use that guilt to motivate us, right? To prompt us to apologize, to make amends, learn from our mistake, do something better.
Mhm.
And not always. Sometimes there are many, many people that carry around guilt that they should not, and they feel guilty about everything they do. And frankly, that's usually related to shame, frankly.
Mhm.
So, but guilt is about actions. And it does not necessarily imply a negative view of your overall self, right? I can feel guilty about one thing I did, but I don't necessarily think that I'm a bad person. And so that's what's very different about shame. Shame is about the feeling of yourself and how you see yourself as somehow being flawed.
Mm.
Something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
Somehow you're a bad person. And that is really, really tough because we tend to let that weigh us down. And we'll go into more of that later, but it can really paralyze us to the
Yeah.
to the point where we just really don't like ourselves. We question ourselves. Well, we have lots of negative behaviors because of shame. It's really sad that it really is a very deep negative feeling about who we are as a person and as an individual.
Yeah. 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 And that's just crazy when you think about it. You were talking about how we end up in a sense not trusting ourselves anymore when it
Mhm.
comes to all of that, because what happens when we are so filled with shame is we tend to numb ourselves. When we numb ourselves, what could be drugs, alcohol, you name it, whatever it is, just to keep from feeling that shame or guilt. When we numb ourselves, we tend to numb the good stuff as well.
Mhm.
So the good should be what carries us through when it comes to dealing with shame or guilt. But when we're numbing ourselves, we don't feel anything. And then at the end of it, with me, it was a matter of all of that kind of
Mhm.
accumulates together when I start to not trust myself anymore,
Mhm.
because you're constantly questioning your decisions, which led to things that may have happened, which led to the shame, which led to the guilt. Okay, so then therefore I cannot trust myself to make proper decisions or even be in a relationship or trust anybody. So therefore I don't trust myself. I mean, it is such a multi-layered
Mhm.
thing when you dive beneath the surface in such a way. What do you think about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think there's different ways that people deal with shame, and absolutely what you just described is one of the really many self-sabotaging ways that people deal with shame is by, frankly, it's easier to be numb than really have to face the world and have to face who I am and what has happened, because somehow that just makes us feel like there's something inherently wrong with us, right?
Right.
And so if we can basically distract, deny, avoid, right? That's what numbing is all about. It's a frankly what I call an unhealthy coping mechanism, right? Is because we tend to go to things that are like substances or distractions or avoidance behavior, and those are means that we never actually deal with what we're feeling,
Right.
and we're avoiding, and we're doing it to protect ourselves, but it actually has the opposite effect. It may have a temporary relief, right? In the moment, we're like, okay, I'm not dealing with it. I'm not thinking about it. I push it aside. And depending on what you're using, right, to numb
Mm,
yourself, whether it's relationships, substances, avoidance behaviors, distractions, it can result in a moment of feeling better, but it stays until we decide to deal with it. It's always
right.
there. And then we tend to perpetuate those behaviors. Like you said, you get so you don't trust yourself. And then we perpetuate that. And we feel guilt and we have all kinds of negative feelings. It can be very hard. And as you said, we don't get to really fully experience life and joy and happiness because of
Exactly.
that.
Because the numbing, the constant
Mm-hmm.
numbing. But in that as well, like you said, these all perpetuate, snowball. One thing feeds the other, feeds the other. When you're in that avoidance, the numbing, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is that keeps you from having to feel, you're just creating more shame, because my guess is most addicts would choose not to be an addict. So with that comes more shame, with the fact
Mm-hmm.
that they are continuously repeating the cycle. They don't feel like they have a safe place to talk to somebody about that shame, because, especially in men, as we all know, our men are not
Mm-hmm.
taught that it's okay to be vulnerable. And in order to be vulnerable and express your shame or express anything that's even asking for forgiveness, you have to become vulnerable to be able to get through that, to talk about it. It's this thing that most of us aren't taught, actually a sign of strength, and it takes courage to get
Mm-hmm.
through that. So it is so crazy when you start thinking about it and dismantling all of it. These people walk around kind of banging around in life full of fear, because it's all based in fear, right?
Oh,
In my
yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
fear drives so many people. I wouldn't be seen as a man if I became vulnerable enough to talk about my shame or what happened to me in my past. Whether you're a man or a woman, we all pack around things that happened in our past that nobody wants to talk about. They could be it could be something that's considered minor to some people, but if it's attached to shame, it takes courage to become vulnerable to be able to talk about it. So, what are your thoughts about how a person, especially let's address the men in the room,
Mm,
how a man can get through that fear of, okay, it's not strong and manly to become vulnerable and talk about these things that happened to me in the past, especially if it has to do with sexual abuse, anything like that. I mean, what are your thoughts, and maybe in your experience in the past, if you've had something like that, what did you do to work with these men to get them to realize it's actually a sign of strength
mm.
to become vulnerable enough to talk through this and get to the other side of it?
I think what you just said is a great statement, is helping people understand that it's a strength and it's not a weakness. And that's a hard concept to flip in our society because men are definitely socially conditioned that you have to be strong, you have to be tough, you're the provider, you're the protector, right? That's
Mhm.
how men are socially groomed since the time they're frankly like an infant. They are groomed that way.
Right?
And so overcoming that is really quite a challenge. It's not easy. And men are basically told from the time they're very little to stuff their feelings and to not feel and to they're not allowed to have emotions in a
Mm.
sense. They're allowed to have the emotions that appear to be strong emotions, for example. And when you think about that, what is that kind of emotion? It's anger,
Mhm.
frustration, right? I can be frustrated. I can be angry because that's a strong emotion. But
Yeah.
I can't be sad. I can't cry. I can't be upset because that's a weak emotion.
Right.
And that we set ourselves up in our society for a lot of damage when you think about relationships and if that's the emotions that's shared in the relationship and not the vulnerable emotions, then that really sets us up, and it sets men up too. Because then, what are men going to do? Right? That's their trained knee jerk response to things. So it's a challenge. But you're right. I have worked with men in this setting, and help them to understand that it is a strength, and more than anything, how it can be so impactful in for them personally and in their lives and with their relationships, right? If they will allow themselves to work through it. But I think you're right when it comes to having a really safe place, right? Because they're typically they're not going to share it with another man because they don't want to see
Mm.
weak, right? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
they may, but most of them aren't, and they think that somehow it again, it's really important to remember that oftentimes people think they're the only ones that there's something really wrong with, that they are inherently flawed and nobody else is. But we all experience
Yeah.
shame, but most people don't see that. And so when you work with somebody in session, you're like, you know what? I know many men that have experienced the same thing. It's pretty incredible because it's empowering because they don't talk about it, they don't share it, so they don't know. They think they're the only ones. And then
Right.
when we're able to unpack whatever it is that is creating that, and frankly, I'm just going to say this. Frankly, men have a hard time identifying a lot of those vulnerable emotions. They just don't even know what they're experiencing because they've never been allowed to. They've never been allowed to talk about
Mm.
it, to even put a label on it for many of them. And shame is actually, I think, a hard one even for women. Women really don't understand shame either. We just don't talk about it because it's too hard. It
Right.
cuts to the core. Shame cuts to the core. And so and as you said, it's so connected to fear, right?
Yeah.
And being found out, right? If I am vulnerable and I talk about this, I'm going to be found out about my weaknesses, my imperfections, and people really know how truly flawed I am.
Right.
That's tough. So finding a safe environment, whether it's therapy or with trusted friends or in a support group, is so essential. It really is, to being able to make those first steps
Mm.
and to have that trust that you can talk about it and that you can work through it.
Right.
And then it becomes powerful. It really is incredible when people start working through that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the idea of packing around something for decades and the fear that keeps that thing stuffed to the very, very, very bottom
Mm-hmm.
The fear of judgment that comes
Mm-hmm.
along, like with what I spoke about the last time we were together, that's something that's very real. The fear of judgment of that's, well, you put yourself in that situation. Well, why
Mm-hmm.
did you go there in the first place? Now, there's a million things somebody could say to that, and I get it because I said it to myself. However, to reconcile logic and reasoning and facts up against emotion and the shame, the guilt, the fear, those don't go together easily. You have to finagle it to the point that it actually in your own heart and soul gets to that point where okay, I can work with all of this. I can become vulnerable. I have a safe place. I have a
Mm-hmm.
safe person, whatever it is for you, if it's a counselor or if it's a friend. You can find the power, find the courage, bring that up. And the second you start talking about it and reconciling in your mind and heart that I did not choose that to happen to me. I chose to be there, but I didn't choose to have that happen to me. I didn't choose to have my spouse beat me for 6 years or whatever it is that somebody's
Mm-hmm.
dealing with. I didn't choose to be um, sexually molested for the first 14 years of my life. I didn't choose that. Was I present? Yes, but I didn't have free will. I didn't have the
Mm-hmm.
ability for whatever reason. So it's hard to come to that in your mind and reconcile these things all together when you're based in fear, you're based in judgment, you're based in shame. It's not easy as us humans, like you mentioned, because especially for men, they're taught to rub some dirt on it, get up and get back on the horse, man. There ain't no
True.
time for being a sissy la la. And instead now, and we know this now, that we need to let our kids feel. We need
Mm-hmm.
to let them feel. We need to let them work through their little moment and be present as a parent or a teacher, whatever it is. Be present
Yeah.
and allow that safe spot. Hey, work through it, babe. Breathe it out. Come on. How are you feeling right now? Just tell me how you feel. It's okay. We've got this. I got you. That safety zone, if you grow up without a safety zone, you grow up without a safe place, a safe parent, a safe loved one, whatever it is. I can't imagine who they become later in life, always based in fear, living with shame, living with guilt, and never feeling safe and feeling like that it was courageous to become that person that just lets it out. And that's sad to me. Very sad. There's a
Yeah.
lot of that. I imagine, especially with what you do and what you've seen. In speaking of that,
Mm-hmm.
when you're with somebody as a client, when you're trying to provide that safe place with a client that they are just so apprehensive and based in fear, and you try to create that safe place, how do you get them to the point, if ever, that they are willing to finally go, how does that work for you?
Yeah, that's good. I just want to say first, you said a lot of great statements, and there are some amazing things that you said in there. I think I'm gonna respond to a couple of them, and then
Okay,
I'll
okay.
answer your
Okay,
question
perfect, perfect.
because they were all so good. But and there's a lot of components, right? But one thing that you talked about is kind of that self-talk, right? That somehow because I put myself there, it's my fault and I should have known better and I always mess things up, right? That is self-blaming. And I think of it almost as the cousin of shame.
Mm,
And the fact of the matter is, I love what you said. Well, I might have chose to go here, but I didn't choose what happened, right? I
mm-hmm.
might have. I think that's really a wonderful tool. And I use that one in counseling
Oh,
as
awesome.
recognizing, did you choose that? Is that something that you would have done? Would you have done that with other people? Would you have responded the same way? Would you have treated other people the same way? Right? You just start asking those deep exploration questions, and people like, well, wait, no, I would have never even fathomed doing something like that. So I'm like, well, then how can you blame yourself? Right?
Right.
How can you blame yourself? And so those deep questions where they kind of flip the inner dialogue right
Mm,
around, I think can be so very powerful. is
Yeah.
just flipping that inner dialogue. And so that's one of those tools that I love to use. I'm glad that you talked about that.
Oh, nice.
I want
Thank
to
you.
backtrack, I think, for just a minute too. I want to say that shame is an interesting thing because it can come from external events, right? Of situations that we've gone through, what's happened. Some of those things can be out of our control, but yet some can be under our control, right? And so we can feel shame about things that we had zero control over. And you named several things a minute ago. But we can also feel shame about things that we had a lot of control over, right? Maybe we put ourselves we did something, right? And then we feel shameful because of what we did.
Hmm.
I'm going to give you some less big examples because we've been talking about trauma, and those are some huge, huge areas where people oftentimes feel shame.
Hmm.
And but it can start, and oftentimes does start, when people are very young. I mean, think about little things that might have been said to you. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Right, right,
Did you ever
right,
say that? Right. Or how about this? Shame on you, right? Pointing
right.
that finger. Shame on you,
Shame,
right?
shame, shame.
Shame,
Yeah.
shame, shame, shame on you. Well, when we hear things enough time, we start to internalize it. And then when something happens, it reinforces that. Oh gosh,
Mm,
yeah, I am bad, right? I've done this thing that's wrong. I am a bad person. So yeah, I should be shamed. I should feel ashamed of myself, right?
hmm.
So if we can work through that and just recognize it and move forward, that's great. But most of the time we don't. We see one experience, but built on another experience that builds on
Mm,
another experience. And then that becomes our identity. And then we see ourselves as inherently flawed, as I mentioned before. And
yeah.
sometimes it can be just really small and minor. And some of those examples, like I was thinking about this, I was like, okay, what came to my mind when I was younger where I felt shame? And I had two that came to my mind. I'll share them both with you. One of them was when I was like in middle school, and we had class in one with one teacher, right, for half the day, and then there was another class the next half of the day. Well, it just so happened that my teacher graded on a curve, right? And so and they used all the classes together. Well, it just so happens that I had a good friend in the afternoon class that was getting really good grades, which then lowered everybody else's grades.
Yeah.
And so everybody thought that I was sharing the answers to her. And
Oh,
yeah, right. And so I was in a position where it was like, it was embarrassing, right? It was
sure.
embarrassing for that. It was also hurting people's grades. And the fact of the matter is, I knew that my friend was actually cheating. And then what do I do? Do I tell people that my good friend's cheating? Do I throw her under the bus? Right.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't say anything, right? I just chose not to say anything. But I was
Hmm.
so ashamed that I knew the truth and I didn't say anything about it, right?
Right.
I just felt so ashamed and so embarrassed about it. And then, and it's funny too, I hadn't thought about that for years. So it's not like something that stayed with me. I just want you to
Right.
know that I'm
No,
way
I,
past that.
oh, of course. Yes, yes. But those feelings we don't forget.
Yeah, yeah. And when we're younger, they build up on something else and they build up on something else, right? So then
Yeah.
maybe the next year, another one that came to my mind is that I remember getting the worst grade I ever did. And I went home and I wasn't worried that I was going to be in trouble. I just felt so personally humiliated that I had let down my parents. So I remember
Oh,
handing my mom my report card, and I didn't say anything. I just started crying. That is just how bad that I just felt. Because I'm like, what is wrong with me that, I was screwing around with my good friend in class. I wasn't paying
yeah.
attention. And this is another friend, by the way, I have to
Oh,
say, a
yeah.
different one. And I wasn't paying attention. And so those little experiences that we have kind of build on each other, and they say, well, there's something wrong with you. You keep screwing up. You keep making mistakes. Right.
Mm,
And so that in itself can build this vision of who you think you are that is so not accurate,
right,
right? It
right.
is so wrong. But we start to own it. We start to believe that. And we let shame take over, unfortunately, because we believe that we're just flawed and we are inherently broken, right?
Right, right.
We don't even recognize that it's normal to make mistakes. People
Absolutely.
do things wrong. It's okay. You're human, right? If we can
Yeah.
just be a little more kind to ourselves, have a little more compassion, it would make a huge, huge difference. Because frankly, we all have shame and no one is immune. And, sometimes I joke around and say, if you're breathing, you felt shame. That's just
Right,
all there is to it.
right,
And it's really the difference is how we respond to it, right? And like
right.
in those examples I gave, I just let them build on each other. And that's why I just felt so innately that something's really wrong with me because I allowed this to happen, right? In both of those cases, I could have done something different.
Oh, yeah.
And so what we have to really do that can help is when we recognize it, when it shows up, how we respond to it in a way
Mm,
that's healthy. Like, how would you respond to a friend, right? We don't give the same grace to ourselves. We don't.
exactly.
We would
Yep.
respond to a friend in an amazing way, but we don't give the same grace to ourselves. Like, no,
Yeah.
it's okay. You're young. You made a mistake, whatever. But
Right.
like, no, I knew better, right? I should have
Yeah.
not done that. We just are so hard and critical on ourselves. It makes
Yes.
it really hard.
Yeah. Exactly. And while you were talking, I I have noticed that the a person's ability to have empathy
Mm-hmm.
directly seems to correlate with their, I don't know if you want to call it, ability to manifest shame. I believe that people that are more empathic and have a pretty good degree of empathy definitely have more shame than people that aren't empathetic, people that tend to not feel in general, in what we would call a soft-hearted person. I believe that there, I mean, this, what are your thoughts? That there is some correlation there with people that have more empathy, definitely feel more and hold themselves more accountable. And, you know, what are your thoughts on that? I'm trying to express that and it's not coming out the way I want, but are you kind of getting what I'm trying to say?
Oh yeah, totally. I got
Okay.
you, girl.
Okay, good,
Yeah,
good.
for sure. I think sometimes depending on our personality, right? I mentioned it depends on how we perceive it, what we do with it. But depending on our personality, if we are just that natural caregiver, pleaser, we peacemaker, right? And I say we because I've been like that and I've worked with so many people that are that way.
Yeah.
Sometimes, again, we're caring and loving to other people, but we don't give ourselves the same kind of grace. And we can
Mhm.
be empathetic to other people, but because we're so deeply empathetic and so deeply compassionate, we feel so deeply, we
Mm.
can be the most judgmental on ourselves.
Yeah. Perfectionism.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And perfectionism is something that we see often masks shame, right? Because I don't want to be found out. So the way that nobody's going to find out, because that would just basically lean all the evidence to it that shows that I am a bad person, right? So if somebody finds
Right.
out, then the truth will be known, right?
Right.
And we don't want that. And so many people actually use perfectionism. It's the coping mechanism. Again, it's an unhealthy coping mechanism, right?
Yeah.
And it's what people use to try to cover up what they're really feeling inside. If they can just be perfect, then they can prove to themselves that they're okay and nobody will find out because
Right.
they're trying to prove to themselves that they're okay.
Yeah. Interesting. We are such a mixed bag of, I say this a lot. It's amazing that the majority of us are walking upright and functioning on a daily basis.
It's true.
Seriously, I sit and think sometimes, my gosh, all the stuff that rattles around in this brain
Mm.
nonstop. And sometimes I think, I'm pretty proud of myself for just getting up and putting my pants on the right way and going out and functioning in a fairly proper way, because all the stuff that's going on all the time, and the self-judgment, and packing
Oh,
around
yeah.
the shame, and packing around, okay, I'm okay. I'm pretty vulnerable. I'm okay being but when is too much, and where's that happy medium? And I can be a lot for some people, and it's like, man, TMI. And I'm like, well, if you're not comfortable with it, it's not my problem. So it's this balance of always navigating between read the room. Is this the right person I could talk openly just about normal stuff? Because I'm pretty open anyway. I'm very like transparent. So you've got to have that right element, the right
Mm,
space, the right person. And in your situation, being on the counseling end of things, and somebody's safe place, somebody's um, person to be able to go to, that's huge. That's not a burden, it's a
mm,
blessing, right? And I too love to be that person
mm,
for other people, and to be able to be in a friendship or a relationship where you've got that safe place, and it's back and forth, to be able to be vulnerable,
mm.
to be able to be strong, weak, however you're perceived and however you feel you are. um it's so important. And again, here we are back with that thing. I wish everybody could be that for each other, because again, the world would be a better
Mm,
place to be able to be safe, feel like I can express myself. I don't have to pack this crap around for decades. I don't
mhm,
need to let it make me go down a path of destruction where it's either destroying relationships or destroying myself. It's just this constant mixed bag of stuff, and how we end up getting through life unscathed sometimes just blows my mind.
Is that possible? Do we get through life unscathed?
No, but intact, I should say, as
Okay, there you
intact
go.
as you could possibly be without, getting to the point that you just say, I can't do it anymore. Can't do
Mm,
it anymore. I'm packing around all this crap. I don't feel safe. I never feel courageous. I vulnerability is not what I can do. Just that point of where some people get where they just can't go on, and this is where self-harm comes in,
mhm,
because they're overwhelmed, they don't feel safe, they are never safe in their own skin. It's just, but
mhm,
shame is one of those things that leads people down that path. It's the things we do, the decisions we make, the hurt that we think we caused, the decisions we made to put us in a situation where we had no choice and something happened, and the inability to be strong, courageous, and feel like I am safe enough to work through this with somebody or by myself. That breaks my heart, to be honest with you.
yeah, it really does. It's so hard. And again, you said so many things. And I just think it's important to recognize that those feelings that we have, shame is a feeling. It's a powerful, powerful feeling, as we mentioned. It doesn't, and those experiences and the things that we've gone through in our life, it doesn't define who we are. And I
Right.
just want to say, especially, it does not define our worth, right? We're
Right.
not our mistakes. We just make mistakes. That's all there is
Exactly.
to it.
Right.
And we're not our failures. Oh, we just fail sometimes, but we fail oftentimes. So look at all of our successes when we're in that kind of state, right? And that's the
Right.
damage that it does.
Right.
And really, we don't recognize our value that really comes from our inherent humanity. We are
Yeah.
all valuable. We are all of worth. And whether you've lived up to it or not, because frankly, we set unrealistic standards. We
Yeah.
absolutely somehow strive to be perfect, as we talked about earlier. And I just think that that's really important to recognize that we do have these very unrealistic standards and that
Mm.
we hold ourselves to, mostly ourselves, sometimes others too, that can happen.
Right.
And I just know that no matter what kind of what reasons people might experience shame, as I mentioned, they can be different. They can be things that are beyond our control, or they can be our own actions, but it all results in the same thing
Mm.
when you think about it. It's a belief that is flawed.
Mm.
Because it tells us that we're unworthy or not deserving, even of connection and relationships.
Yeah.
And it's important that when we recognize that shame in any form can have the power to change us.
Mm.
It can change us
Yeah.
if, right? You said it best, if we're willing to confront it with vulnerability, then we can start to heal. And it's incredible when that happens. And I just, that's the most powerful thing in the world when I get to watch it in a session. Oh my
Oh, I
gosh.
can imagine.
It is just, people would always ask me, how do you listen to people's stories and not just get emotional all the time?
Mm.
And I'm like, well, when the time I get most emotional, when we've kind of made it to the end of that path. And I have to tell you, to me, it's a privilege. It's just a privilege to walk down somebody else's path with them.
Mm.
It's such a
Yeah.
privilege. And then to see when they came to a place that they did not ever imagine that they could get to. That's
Yeah.
when I get kind of choked up and a little
Oh, I
teary
can
eyed.
imagine.
That is just so powerful. And it's just so beautiful to see that happen. And that's the wonderful thing. Anybody who's listening to this, I just know that you can heal. You can get to a place. So many things, so many times I find people walk into the office and they've just lost hope. As you mentioned, they go down those horrible cycles
Hmm.
and they can become very self-deprecating and even
Mm.
worse, suicidal, right? And that is just horrible. And most of the time people just don't understand that there is hope, that things can get better, that they don't have to feel like this anymore. You
Right.
really don't. There
Right.
is a way. And can I say one of the best ways is what you demonstrated, Tiffany?
Oh,
You
thank you.
demonstrated one of the best ways because shame thrives in silence.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
That's a fact. Say that again.
Shame thrives in silence.
Definitely.
And last time when we met, you weren't silent
Right.
and
Right.
you shared. And once you share, some powerful things happen. It can no longer thrive. It thrives in secrecy, silence,
Yeah.
and a lot of it is related to self-judgment, right?
Mm. Yep.
And then when you start talking about it and you hear, I love it when you work, whether it's talking with the friends and you have a friend say, wow, me too. Oh my gosh, that shame starts to lose its power, right?
Right.
Back to empathy, right? When people are empathetic and oh my gosh,
Yes.
I see you. I've been there. That is so powerful. It is
Yes, it
just
is.
amazing to see. But secrecy and silence is only going to make it worse.
Right. It's like a cancer. Definitely.
Yeah,
Just metastasizing everywhere. And pretty
all the
soon,
way.
right. And pretty soon it's like it's covering your mouth to a point and you can't, it's not coming out because it's gotten in there and created, its own little tiny cavern inside your soul and it ain't coming out. And, unless you do the work it's definitely about courage. Courage
Mhm.
is definitely pulling that thing out. And it's a oh,
Excuse
bless
me.
you, my friend. There it is.
Excuse
It's out
me.
there.
It's out
That's
there.
okay. You only have one? I usually do 5. It's like it's a process. I'm like, I'm okay.
I'm
But
good.
yeah, good. So the idea, and this came to my mind, I wrote it down when you
Mm,
were talking because it made me think about some things. It's kind of like get out of your own way,
mm,
get out of your own way and think about how I want to be that person for somebody else to where I
mm,
can be a safe space. I can do that. So think about you advocating for yourself. If you don't
mm,
have that safe person, safe space, whatever it is, then journal it out.
mm,
Journal it out because I think that in itself, as we all know, is therapeutic. And once that
mhm.
that first step is made, it's out. That thing is out there. It's in writing and it's out. And maybe that's the first step to being able to work up the courage. Once it's out, you've penned it
Yeah.
out, your thoughts are there, read it back to yourself, realize and recognize the bravery and the courage and the words that you just filtered out on your own. Sometimes when you do that and you go back and read it, you don't even remember writing it. You don't
Mhm.
remember like, oh my God, I sound I mean, that sounds amazing. It sounds like, I'm reading a book of my
Yes,
life, you know?
yes.
And getting that out is the first step for some people to be able to make the next courageous step forward in reaching out to somebody like you, calling up
Mm,
a friend, calling up a family member. Can I have an hour of your time? I need to talk. There you go. Maybe even put it in front of them and go, "Hey, read this. I just need you to read it." And
mm,
then that's the other baby step. And maybe these steps are what it takes to get to that point and go, "Oh my God, I did it." I just got goosebumps, by the way. I just got goosebumps after saying that and taking that deep breath. So
mm.
that in itself, I think, is maybe a first baby step in the right direction for those folks packing that stuff around and needing to just get it out for yourself for that freedom.
Are you sure you haven't been a counselor before?
I know. No, but all the personality tests I ever took in my life said counselor, therapist, detective. That was all that I ever got told because of the way
Oh,
my brain is wired.
interesting.
Well, I'm so
Interesting.
glad. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, honestly, when you asked me the question, "What do you do?" and you just answered a couple of the steps.
Oh,
When I'm working with somebody, and I love the journaling because that is a way to have a voice, right?
mm,
It's a amazing first step because once you get it out of your brain and it's tangible, it's in writing, you can read it, you can see it, you can feel it pass from your brain to your hand onto paper.
yeah.
Then it becomes tangible. And that is where you're able to start to work with it,
Mm,
frankly. I mean some people don't write and some people don't talk about it. And some people can learn to work with it in different ways, right? By challenging their thoughts, for example. There are
yeah.
different ways, but that is a really great, powerful step. And when you were telling me that, it made me think that I bet Tiffany's done some journaling before. And maybe that
I
was a first
do.
step for her.
Yeah. I don't do enough. What I
Okay.
do is I blast out thoughts and then I lose it in notebooks and
Okay.
you'll find notebooks all over the place and random pieces of paper like this one.
Okay.
Yeah. This says, this is a quote. The right path isn't always easy to find, but
Mm.
once you do, the only question is whether you're strong enough to walk it.
Ooh,
Things
that's a
like that. You'll
great
find that
quote.
all over the place of
Ooh,
randomness
stick those
and
up on
thoughts.
your wall. That's
I know,
amazing
right?
quote.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. And it's Lord Saladin.
Um,
I don't know. Anyway, quote. That was
I
a great
like
quote.
it.
Yeah,
I'm going to
thank you.
write that down. Lord Saladin.
So,
Okay.
yeah, it's Saladin. Yeah,
Ldin.
Saladin.
Okay. I think I might have read some of his things before. I'm not
Oh,
sure. I'll have to look.
yeah,
I
but I
I
have that
want
in
to
for
I want to add something. Well, just sometimes when you say the word journal, many people who haven't been to therapy, think of a journal as like a daily telling of your story, what you did that day, like a daily
Mm,
journal. One of my favorite, I have a couple different types of journals I like to do. And we'll probably talk about both of them today, but one
yeah.
of my favorite is what we just discussed. It's called process journaling. And
Oh,
it is literally where you just put your pen on paper and you start writing and it's like no bars hold. You just keep writing. You don't even have to think about it. You don't have to filter. Just
mm,
let everything. It's kind of like word vomit, right? You just
yeah,
spill
yeah.
it out all onto paper.
Perfect. Yeah.
It's exactly what it is. It's
Yeah,
not something that you're necessarily going to share. If you want to share, you can go and rewrite it after that, right?
exactly.
And then you can write a story or you can write a letter to somebody or however, just some thoughts.
Yeah,
But it's just the process of getting out of the brain, and it's so powerful if you just keep writing and keep writing and keep writing until you have nothing to write. And once in a while, sometimes it can be very overwhelming. I will warn
mm,
people that ahead of time. It's very emotional. You may need to take a break from it, come back to it, right? Take your time at it if needed. Some people just sit there and write all at one time, but it has a very cathartic effect just by getting it out. And
yeah,
then, of course, it's starting that process of having a voice. And that can be so freeing and so
yeah,
liberating. And it breaks the silence. And that is incredible when you can break the silence.
yeah.
It's so powerful. And then if you want to tell somebody your story, you'll be more clear, right? Of
Mm,
what you want to say, how you
yeah,
want to say it, just by writing it out. But regardless, if you don't journal, then definitely reach out to somebody. And I like to say it this way, somebody who has earned the right to your story, right?
Love
Who's
that.
earned the right to hear your story,
Absolutely. Yep.
right? That's a
Yep.
person you can trust. And of course, you can go to a counselor if you just don't find anybody that fits that.
Right.
That's another wonderful way. And that person should be giving, potentially the same response that you would to somebody else, like empathy, right? I think
Yep.
that empathy is truly the antidote. I really do.
It is. It is.
Empathy
And
is
you know
the
who said
antidote.
that? You know who else said that?
Who said
Brene
that?
Brown. Brene
Yes.
Brown.
That's exactly where I got that from.
Oh,
Oh
I
my
love
gosh.
her. I just got goosebumps again. Brene
Brene.
is amazing. And I
Yes.
have a quote here. Whenever I didn't want to interrupt you, I just was like, that's what
No.
Brene says.
I'll share two more things, and I want you to
Yeah.
share your quote because
Yeah.
I wanted to fully give Brene most of the work I've done, frankly, with shame and vulnerability comes from Brene Brown because
Give it
she
up to
is an
Brene Brown.
incredible, oh,
She,
give it up for her.
yeah.
She has done so much research in that area
Yeah.
and has discovered things that she never thought she would even imagine and discover. And
Yep.
because of that, she's been able to help people, like
Mm,
millions of people,
yeah.
with shame and vulnerability and really tough emotions. Um,
Absolutely.
so the only other couple little things I was going to say in counseling that I would do is just to help people to recognize shame. What's it look like? And what might trigger those feelings for you,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
It could be something like, I'm feeling like I'm not enough, right? And oftentimes it shows up in our body. It's just a really bad feeling.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel good. And so that can help us identify it and
Yeah.
also the triggers. But just those negative thoughts that we say to ourselves, like I mentioned earlier, those are shameful thoughts. And
Yeah.
that is how you can start to recognize it. Because that's the first step, is recognizing it and then what triggers it. And then once you have that awareness, then you can start to say, hey, why do I believe this? Where did I get this story? Is this really true?
Hmm.
Or is it because of what I experienced and what I'm trying to avoid, right? Is it
Yeah.
because of my fear, my culture, my trauma, right? So many things. And so asking those critical thoughts and challenging it can help people to move forward. And I just love asking critical questions to help people to think about things in a
Right.
different way. It's so
Absolutely.
wonderful.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
so
Okay.
anyway,
Anyway,
tell me.
no, it's awesome. Brene Brown. So, I of course no people that don't know who Brene Brown, it's Brene, Brene, like Renee with a B, Brene Brown. If you don't know who she is, you need to look her up. Any of her TED Talks, she was on Oprah Masterclass. Anything she does, you need to. I mean, and I need to get her books and read her books. But I have followed her now for it'll be probably 2 years in
Mm,
September ish when I dove deep into my healing journey. So, and I found her just by flipping through a million podcasts and stuff. And so anyway, she's a psychology professor and author and has studied shame and vulnerability for a long time. I'm not sure how many years, but it's been many years. So she says shame derives its power from being unspeakable. And she
mm,
goes on to say, shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love, belonging, and connection. And you've already touched on that in many ways, but that is a very powerful thing if you stop and think about how shame can get in there and affect us in so many ways. To feel, I mean, first of all, it's unspeakable. You spoke
mhm,
of that, it's unspeakable, and that it's intensely painful, which is obvious, and it's the
mhm,
experience of believing that we are flawed, unworthy of love,
mhm.
and belonging or connection. What a horrible way to
Isn't
exist.
that sad? Isn't that just really sad?
Horrible
And
way to exist.
and I want to say that oftentimes we're not even aware, and
Mhm.
especially men, they're not even aware. They may have that. innate belief right down to their core, and then they act in ways, but
Yes.
sometimes they don't even have the awareness, because I think it's like that autonomic nervous system that kicks into gear, like fight, flight, or freeze, right?
Yeah.
And so we're just responding to something that we don't even know. We're just, our body is kicked into gear. It doesn't feel right. There's something wrong. I got to protect myself. And then we do all kinds of things that are unhealthy, as we've
Yeah.
talked about, to protect ourselves. And that can be, drugs and alcohol, but it can also be avoidance or perfectionism, right? There's so many different
Absolutely.
ways. It can be anger, lashing out, abandoning ourselves to please others, right?
Yep.
There's so
Yep.
many ways, because it really is we're trying to protect ourselves from something that seems just too psychologically overwhelming for us to be able to handle.
Right. Right. And sometimes it is.
Yes.
That's where you hope that you get to the point that you can settle it down in your system and reach out for help and get through that, to be able to work through it and have a good quality of life, have that ability to just be settled in your soul and accept, you know what, you didn't choose
Mm.
that. That did not, that did not happen because you chose this, or whatever it is that you're packing around.
Sure.
Um,
Or if you did choose it, it's okay, because everybody makes mistakes,
sure.
right? And
Yep,
it's
that
okay,
too. Yeah, that
right?
too. Absolutely. Yeah, and fear, it's crazy how so much that we talk about and that we work through, that keeps us locked into to feeling the shame and the depression and the anxiety, and all these
Mm,
things are all based in fear to some degree. Fear got you here. So
mhm.
what do we need to do to walk that back? What do we need to do to reverse this and work through it so you can get through that and live a just a nice, peaceful, loving life the best you can? Because we all really want that. You would hope. I guess I can't speak for some of the crazies that are on TV right now, purposely destroying things and living a destructive life. Maybe that's what they want to choose, but you would think at the core of it that we all just want to be happy, you know?
Yeah, and that fear goes back to that autonomic nervous response, right? And then we act in ways sometimes we're not even aware of what we're doing. And you said it really well in regards to how it might manifest itself, because it might manifest itself in things like anxiety, right? Things like
Mhm.
depression. We can internalize it without even really knowing what's going on. Low self-esteem, relationship problems, right? Self-destructive behaviors. There's so
Mhm.
many ways that it can manifest itself. And so if you're not able to identify shame, then identify the other things, right? You're like, well, I'm depressed. Why? Well, I have a low self-esteem. Why? Let's work on that, right? I find
Mm.
myself being very defensive. Okay, let's work on that. Why do I need to be perfect? Okay, let's work on that. You know, if you
Yeah.
continue to identify those underlying issues, frankly, shame is the underlying, I should say it backwards. Shame is the underlying to many of those things.
Sure.
And that can really help you to then move forward. And I also just want to put in a plug to go watch one of Brene Brown's videos,
Absolutely.
because it might somehow help you to say, I can relate to that. Okay, I get
Mm.
it. And then when you find that you're not alone and you see the impact it's had on millions of people, I mean, Brene Brown is brilliant in what she's researched, and her knowledge and how she can help people.
Yeah.
It can just be, like I always say, those major aha moments that can change your life around, and recognize that you've been carrying a deeply painful emotion
Mhm.
that that has really fundamentally affect you and your
Yeah.
life and your relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to finally see that what you have packed around with you for so long that has,
Oh, yeah.
it comes out in the form of rage and knee jerk reaction of defense. And you think, I have essentially demolished relationships
Mm,
over many, many years. You got shame, you got anger, you got
mm,
this. Okay, what's at the bottom? Let's start from there and then work your way up. And because one perpetuates the other, perpetuates the other, perpetuates the other. That is what we need to do. Baby steps, put one foot in front of the other, whether it's Journal, baby step. Talk to somebody you trust, baby step. You may not want to tell it all at one time. That's okay, baby step.
It comes down to being vulnerable, right? Because
Absolutely.
we fear rejection and judgment or not being enough, and we don't want to expose ourselves. But in fact, if we actually talk about it, we take away its power, and then we
Absolutely.
truly expose it for what it is. And it's just a feeling, and it does not reflect our worth. Gosh, I just want to scream that from the top of the rooftop.
Yes.
It does not
Yes.
reflect our worth.
That's
And
huge.
by being vulnerable, it actually allows us to be seen
Yep.
in those moments of weakness and fear and imperfection. And then we can truly be honest with ourselves, even if it's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
But
absolutely.
that helps us to start to trust ourselves. And I can say that I can imagine it because there was a time I didn't trust my thoughts, I didn't trust my actions, I didn't trust myself. Yeah, I really did think that I was inherently flawed. I think I
Mm,
carried a lot of shame for a lot of different reasons. And I definitely know the power in being able to work through it and getting to a place where you can trust yourself. That is like liberating. It's
yeah.
amazing. It's
Yeah.
like the best ever for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there were many times in my life that the only person I could trust was myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is that
Definitely.
too, because
Yeah.
sometimes people don't have, like you mentioned earlier, family that is supportive or whatever the case might be when they're
Yeah.
younger. But when we can face shame and we can work through it and we're willing to confront it, it can really transform our life. I
Mm,
know that. I've seen that in my own life. And it can really help us to embrace ourselves, embrace who we are, and then
yeah.
to move forward in life the way that we want to. And that to me is just so powerful. I want to add one more thing, something that we haven't really talked about that I think is oftentimes related, especially because we live in a very Christian society, right? And I think that oftentimes shame, it can be treated a couple different ways. Let me just put it like that. It can lead to a healthy conviction for some individuals when they've done things. Maybe for them, spirituality is their core belief, and it is what they need to help them to
Mm,
move on. Right? I don't.
yeah.
I think that is so important. If that is your core belief, then use the repentance process to help you to move to a different place
Yeah.
and give yourself grace, knowing that I just love this little thought. As I was thinking about this, I had to write this down. I said, God doesn't whisper shame. He calls us by name, not by our mistakes.
Mm, mm, yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful.
And we may be flawed, but we can still be chosen. And we may be broken, but we can still be loved.
Mm,
And that's what grace says. And I think that's really important to recognize that that's what grace says. Because I
mm,
think sometimes in Christianity, we can feel shame. Oftentimes people are shamed, right, in
yes.
Christianity for not
Yes.
living a certain way. And that can be very toxic. And so I just want to recognize that there can be toxic shame greatly in religion and spirituality, but there can also be an amazing, healthy conviction that can actually be the catalyst to make positive changes in a
Yeah.
person's life and actually really help them to grow. And so I just like to say, if you have negative thoughts coming in and it's shameful thoughts, that is not the divine. That's the adversaries talking
Yeah.
all the
Definitely.
way. That is
Yeah.
not the divine. And so don't listen to that. Just don't listen to it. I just think it's really important because I've worked with many people with different spiritual backgrounds. And that's been a huge topic. If they have a lot of shame and guilt, we have to really address their core beliefs.
Yeah, well, that's awesome that you get down to that foundation. I think it is very important because I you and I are both believers, and I am a very spiritual person, and I definitely attribute a lot of my healing
Mm.
to that belief and to my constant prayer, my meditating on things which have everything to do with spirituality, and just I I don't know what I'd do without it. So I think it's definitely appropriate to bring that into the conversation for sure.
And whatever your core beliefs are, I think
Yeah,
that's important to identify and work with them, because people have a lot of diverse core beliefs, even in the same religion, even in
sure.
the same type of spiritual direction that they're taking, like if they're Buddhist or whatever. But yet,
Hmm.
when you talk to them personally, they still have a different core belief, right? Because
Hmm.
they understand things differently. And so, your core beliefs almost always need to be addressed when you're going through something, because that's
Hmm.
where you're going to get stomped. You either
Right,
stomp on yourself or you get stuck or whatever the case may be. So
right.
you definitely need to address them.
No, I think that's absolutely right. It definitely is part of my healing journey for sure. So, gosh, this has been wonderful, Dr. Becky. I love we covered all aspects of shame and everything that's underlying, surrounding it, above it. It's all
In
around it.
between.
Yeah, because it's just so multi-layered and relies on so many other things to
Mm.
thrive. And I think that it's just a wonderful conversation. And I can't thank you enough again. And I want to make sure that everybody knows that they can still find you on your Dear Dr. Becky YouTube channel, and they need to reach out and look up anything Brene Brown has done. She's just amazing. And I just thank you. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, this is such great conversation. And I thank you for honestly for giving a great example that you have given on how to address shame, to get rid of the silence and the secrecy, and to start to talk about it. I just think that's amazing that you are taking those courageous steps. And I
Thank you.
appreciate you. And this
Thank
conversation has
you.
been great. And I love the knowledge that you have. So thank you for
Yeah.
that. Your
Oh,
contributions are incredible.
thank you. I appreciate it. That means a lot coming from you. I'm just trying to get my way through this. And if I can help anybody along the way, that is a blessing on top of a blessing. And I am so grateful. So between you and I together, I think we're a pretty powerful
Woohoo!
team, right?
Girl
Yes.
power, girl
Yes,
power.
exactly. Yes, and per our last, just so everybody kind of knows, per our last conversation we had, we're definitely going to keep doing more content and
Mhm.
plan on doing some pretty cool stuff in the future. So thank you for that. And I'm just honored to be able to be in this company with you. So thank you so much, Dr. Becky.
Well, it's a privilege. So thank you, Tiffany. Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you always. And I will sign off for now. We'll see you next time.
Wonderful. Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye bye.